Good morning. It is Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. This is a school board workshop, and the time is 12 p.m. There are 4 items on the agenda. And before I start, I want to say Ms. Morgan will be joining us today via phone. The first item is the agenda review of September 19th, 2023 regular agenda. The second item for the workshop is insurance and benefits management's ITNs. And then the third item is also insurance and benefits management ITMs for voluntary group legal plan. And the last item is our board attorney mid-year interim evaluation process. Dr. Bernier, would you like to proceed with the agenda review?
I can, sir. I did not get any questions till just a few minutes ago. It was a computer glitch with the board member's computer. A reminder to all, sometimes when you're at home, if you save it and you attempt to send it later, it may not actually send till you come into the building. So that's what happened to them. There were just a couple of questions that I know we can certainly answer right now. One of the questions was regarding H4, the annual agreement with Lee Health. The question was specifically about how many trainers does that employ for our district. We have more trainers than athletic trainers than this, but the ones employed through this particular agreement with Lee Health, the number is 12. There's 12 athletic trainers that are supported by that. There was a question related to the renewal of the agreement for the Jobs for Florida Graduates program grant. Can you explain the impact to the district of these 2 positions and some qualifications and quantifications regarding the salaries? So we'll do the breakdown and we'll provide that to all of you. The second was consent to piggyback off Duval County Public Schools regarding fingerprinting. These are the people who do our fingerprinting. This is the organization that does that. This does not include specific prices for the fingerprinting, and the board member asked us to look into and to discuss, do the fingerprints cost the same for each one of our positions, meaning for an administrator, for a bus driver, a bus attendant, support staff? And the answer to that question is yes. There's a flat fingerprinting fee that people pay, and yes, they do pay for it up front. We've had some public speakers asking us to consider that, and that would be a negotiated item that we could certainly continue to work on in our ongoing bargaining process. The other question was about human resources related to conducting exit interviews or surveys of employees, not only who are coming into the organization, but those who are leaving, as well as doing climate surveys. The answer to all those questions is yes, we do all of that, and the update will be forthcoming when Human Resources presents on retention and recruitment data that they come to you every fall with. So I believe those are all the questions that have been turned in at this time. I will review this more carefully and make sure that we provide written responses to all these questions to all board members regarding the agenda coming up Tuesday night.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any comments on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Bernier, I will move on next to insurance and benefits management, ITNs. Would you like to introduce the presenters?
I would be honored to, and if I could take just a moment of personal privilege, I'd also like to introduce another member who's in our galley today. I'm very, very pleased. You've heard the name. You got a chance to see him the other day when he was actually appointed, but I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Mr. Angel Gomez, who'll be taking on our Chief of Communications and Government Relations position. He is beginning to schedule appointments with all of you so he can not only introduce himself, but begin the hard work in earnest related to our platform and our position as we get ready for our visit to Tallahassee in mid-October. So just wanted a chance to introduce him and say congratulations and welcome aboard again.
Welcome to your first exciting workshop.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to have these next 2 presentations on insurance benefits regarding ITNs and the work that's been done. As you know, the school district was asked by multiple committees to go back out and look at all of our insurance and benefits. That work was led by Mrs. Bonnie McFarland. But Bonnie, as you recall, Ms. McFarland left us for outside employment. and that gave our Executive Director of Human Resources, Mr. Dodig, a challenge, and he found an amazing person in the Director for Insurance and Benefits Management, and that is Mr. Robichaud. So seated before you are Mr. Dodig, our Executive Director of Human Resources, and Mr. Robichaud, the Director of Insurance and Benefits from his department, and they will take you through the ITNs, look at our insurance and benefits and how these particular ITNs worked out and where we're headed for our insurance moving into the future.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. I'll just quickly introduce Michael. He's been here, I don't know, 5 months. 5 months. Has been doing a fantastic job. He did come in the middle of these ITNs, and we'll have several more for you after today. Today is our medical insurance and our legal plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael Robichaud.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board chairpersons, Vice Chair Fisher, fellow board members, Board Attorney DePue Bruno, and Superintendent Bernier. For the record, my name is Michael Robichaud, and I'm the Director of Insurance and Benefits Management. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address the board today regarding the results of 2 of our ITNs launched earlier this year. Insurance and Benefits Management launched 6 ITN solicitations this past year for the benefits seen here on this slide. The results of each of these ITNs would take effect at the start of our benefits plan year, which is April 1st, 2024. The purpose of these ITNs that we'll discuss today was to select 1, a third-party administrator for our medical and pharmacy insurance, and an insurance carrier for our group legal plan. The first presentation this afternoon will review the results of the medical and pharmacy ITN. In the event there would be plan changes, such as number of plans offered or change in premiums, for example, which may be brought about through bargaining, those presentations and plans will be brought to the board later this fall. The second presentation we'll review this afternoon will review the results of the group legal plan ITN. The school district has been self-insured with Aetna as our third-party administrator since April 1st of 2015. As our third-party administrator, Aetna adjudicates all of our medical and pharmacy claims. They provide access to network providers that they have contracts with. They provide continuous support to our wellness initiatives, as well as provide support in the form of 2 on-site representatives. Eligibility for medical and pharmacy insurance is open to those employees who work 30 hours or more in a regular position here. With our current contract with Aetna expiring March 31st of 2024, we launched the medical and pharmacy ITN on March 8th earlier this year to collect proposals to administer our medical and pharmacy insurance. Proposers were asked to submit various plan options, including one that mirrors our current plans today. 2 proposers submitted a fully insured option with pharmacy carved in. 1 proposer provided a self-insured pharmacy carved out option, and 3 proposers submitted a self-insured option with pharmacy carved in, which is what we currently have today in our environment. Important to note that the Finance Advisory Committee, as well as some additional committees, as Mr. Dodig had stated, did request that we look at all options available, including a fully insured option. We feel that the ITN did meet that request. Per board policy and Florida statute, a scoring committee was formed to review and score these proposals. Employees from within and outside of our insurance task force made up this scoring committee. And just a quick background and reminder, our insurance task force is made up of employees and is an extension of bargaining, and it focuses on benefits and wellness programs that we offer to our employees and our families here. On June 21st, 2023, the scoring committee reviewed and scored the ITN submissions, ranking Aetna as their first option to remain as the district's third-party administrator for medical and pharmacy insurance. Additionally, the scoring committee scored in favor of remaining self-insured with pharmacy carved in, as we have it today. The results of the scoring committee were reviewed at the August 3rd Insurance Task Force meeting. The Insurance Task Force supported the results of the scoring committee as reflected in their meeting minutes. Aetna's new contract would take effect April 1st, 2024 for 5 years with the option of 2 2-year renewals. Continuing with Aetna provides consistency for our members, as well as minimizing any disruption for their family and themselves. This slide brings to the board's attention the projected cost avoidance with our new contracts with Aetna. Important to note that these projections are not necessarily additional funds that we're going to have at our disposal when this is all said and done. The medical and pharmacy insurance world is a fluid environment. Changes to the formulary, drug costs, network providers, as well as healthcare trend can impact these projected cost avoidance measures. The 5-year projected cost avoidance of $31.3 million is broken down as follows. $23.5 million in pharmacy in the form of rebates and ingredients cost, $5.7 million in the form of innovation and wellness support, and $2.1 million due to the reduced administrative service fees. As a quick recap, Aetna received the highest score by our ITN scoring committee to remain our third-party administrator for medical and pharmacy insurance when their current contract expires on March 31st of 2024. We also reviewed projected cost avoidance through our new contract with Aetna. The results of this ITN are a win-win for both the district and its employees in that it reduces administrative costs to the district while ensuring consistency and minimal disruption to our employees and their families. Once again, as a reminder, in the event there would be plan changes, such as number of plans offered, or again, changes to premiums brought about through bargaining, those discussions would be brought to your attention at a meeting later this fall, as they would not take effect until April 1st of 2024. I'd like to pause now for any comments or questions from the superintendent or the board.
Thank you very much, both to Mr. Dodig and Mr. Robichaud. I don't have any specific comments. I'm open to hearing your discussion, any questions that myself or the staff would be able to answer and support.
Okay. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you for that presentation and welcome. My question is, I've been hearing a lot about the insurance and the pharmaceuticals. So for a person who has the insurance, the only provider that they can go to is CVS. Is that correct? Because it's owned by Aetna?
Because they're their preferred pharmacy. It's for the pricing that is set in our contracts. That's correct.
Okay, so are we open to, and I think sometimes that, just from what I've heard, there are times when people cannot get to CVS, or they've had a different pharmacy in the past, or a local pharmacy who does deliveries. And I've been hearing that a lot of our employees, especially bus drivers, are going to individual pharmacies and just paying the price that they would pay. Whatever the cost is at CVS is what they're paying for their prescriptions. And how would we go about, because I know that, I believe it's, the county has Aetna as well, but they have other partners with their pharmacies versus just the one option.
Yeah, so.
Given options.
Okay, so CVS, yes, they would be the preferred pharmacy within our contract, but those are discussions that we can have with our TPA about looking at those options to be able to get those pricings to be at other pharmacies. But again, that's all through the contract negotiations that we would have to discuss with them.
And so how is that done? As far as if there were people who were interested, or if there's other Walgreens, Web, whatever. I mean, there's multiple ones in the area that are just individual ones. How would they go about doing that, getting the information to participate, to give options? I believe in options.
So, Mrs. Jordan, let me make sure I qualify your question. Just to make sure I understand it. Your question is if a employee was to fill a prescription and wish to fill that prescription outside of CVS, which is the preferred provider, based upon the agreement, we carve in or carve out pharmaceuticals. So in this particular option, when it was reviewed, the pharmaceuticals were carved in, meaning that it would be under the full umbrella. We wouldn't have one medical policy and one prescription policy, that they would be brought together, and therefore, and it was reviewed and scored appropriately and moved forward. But I think your question is, does an employee still have flexibility if they choose not to go to CVS, to go to another pharmaceutical supplier? I don't want to name names because we'll run out of names before we run out of people who do that. Mr. Robichaud, can you help us with the answer to that question?
Yeah, the answer would be yes, they have that option. Pricing would be different based on the contract, and our PBM, which is Aetna, they negotiate with the local pharmacies for their pricing for our members.
Okay, so you said the answer is yes, and the reason I'm asking that, because I heard that when, for instance, someone came up to me and said their pharmacy is XYZ, and they went there, they turned in their prescription, then they were told that they could not get it. So then they had to, and that was before this was even on the agenda.
Okay.
So then they had to transfer, go back to their doctors, transfer everything to XYZ. So in order to get their prescription. Or there are doctor's offices who have the prescription within their facility, and that's where they would go to their doctors and then go there and get their prescription, and now they're not permitted to do that. They have to transfer everything over and now make another step to go get their prescription, which may or may not ever get there.
Are you sure they couldn't get the prescription, or they couldn't get it at the price that CVS or Caremark, and by the way, Caremark is their mail prescription service owned by CVS. That's another option for our employees.
I was told that they could not get that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that because frankly, I get a prescription from Publix, one of my prescriptions, so, and they honor the price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to
So
know.
I
Maybe
think-
it was a misunderstanding.
If I may, I think there's an important lesson to be learned here. There's a reasons why we have an insurance benefits division. I think it would be really good, Mr. Dodig, if you would, through email, share that information not only with me, but with the board of the phone number for that particular division, so that if an employee has questions, gives us another opportunity also to work with communications to put more information out to our employees so they know where to call to get a specific answer to something like this. Maybe an FAQ out on the benefits website could add something like this particular situation to a set of FAQs. If I'd like to get my prescription filled at ABC versus XYZ, can I do that, and how would I go about that? Who do I call? If I have questions and concerns, who do I get in touch with? That way we can have our employees working directly and give them consistent and correct answers. Thank you for both gentlemen for your response to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Patrica.
So I have said this to the board after almost every ITF meeting, and I think it bears repeating. The amount of work that went into not just these two ITNs, but the other 4 that you'll have coming to us in the future has been tremendous. I'm very appreciative of the amount of work that goes into it. And it's funny, sitting in that room, it's not your typical public education room, because you guys are benefits people, so you approach things a little bit differently. And I've learned so much from you, and I'm just really grateful for the level of expertise. So good job, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Question, I don't need the answer to this right now, but with the Aetna contract back in 2015, what the original term were and any subsequent options, how long they were. And then I have a follow-up question to that. 5-year contract in this, is that fairly industry standard?
For medical, yes.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if there's any benefit to a shorter, who it helped the most, the length of the contract, if that's part of the savings, just because I know of market fluctuations and things like those, so.
That is standard for medical, yes.
Okay, that's all I had at the moment. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica.
If I could speak to that just a little bit, what I've learned is that the disruption to employees in changing carriers is huge, and so that's part of the 5-year thing. And it's also, I think, part of the decision-making process. We don't want to upset our employees by changing their coverage if we're going to save $2. And, you know what I mean,
Yes.
$2 on scale. So cost can't be the only factor determined, which is always true, but particularly here because of the disruption to employees.
Ms. Jada Fleming.
I wanted to just piggyback off what Mrs. Patrica had said. I was able to sit in on the meeting in your absence, and it is clear that there are very qualified people in the room making really tough decisions, and I appreciate how much hard work and homework you're doing in the background, because I have dealt in the insurance world before, and it can be incredibly confusing on all types of levels, so I know how much this means also to our employees. And I just wanted to kind of also plug for our health and wellness coordinator was there, able to talk. And I almost put something on social media site or asked for it regarding how many tips she had for our employees to be able to get some reimbursements. And I think there are a lot of educators that just don't know that they've got that opportunity to have a gym reimbursement, and then the app, the walking spree or whatnot. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, our employees were getting those plugs. You guys do a great job at giving us the newsletter and the update through email, but that was something I did not know existed through the wellness, and the wellness coordinator presented that. So, but thank you, wonderful job.
Thank you.
Is Ms. Morgan on the phone? And if she is, do you have any comments or questions?
I am on the phone, and I have no comments. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think that concludes that presentation. Move on to the next one, which is the voluntary group legal plan.
I don't believe there's any need to reintroduce our presenters.
Got you. All right. So moving on to our group and legal plan ITN. Since April 1st of 2018, the district has offered a fully insured group legal plan to our employees. Our current carrier, MetLife, has been our carrier since the plan's inception. Our group legal plan is a voluntary benefit available to employees who work 20 hours or more in a regular position and is paid for by the employee at 100%. With our current contract with MetLife expiring March 31st of 2024, we launched the group legal plan ITN on March 8th earlier this year to collect proposals to administer this group legal plan benefit. Proposers were asked to submit proposals highlighting costs, different services offered, as well as any plan enhancements compared to what we currently offer. A total of 7 vendors were notified of the ITN and 3 submitted proposals, including the incumbent MetLife. Once again, per board policy and Florida statute, a scoring committee was formed to review and score these proposals. Members from within and outside of our insurance task force made up this scoring committee. On June 21st, 2023, the scoring committee reviewed and scored the ITN submissions, ranking MetLife as their first option to remain as the district's insurance carrier for this benefit. The results of the scoring committee were once again reviewed at the August 3rd Insurance Task Force committee meeting, and again, the insurance task force supported the results of the scoring committee as reflected in their meeting minutes. MetLife's new contract would take effect April 1st for 2024 for 3 years with the option of 3 one-year renewals. As a reminder, the premiums for the group legal plan are paid completely by the employees who elect this benefit. Our new contract with MetLife would include a reduction in premiums for employees along with enhanced benefits and services. Some of these enhanced benefits to call out include additional consultation support, family law matters, traffic and criminal matters, as well as help with wills and estate planning. In addition, MetLife has also issued an allowance to the district to assist with any implementation needs. Again, as a quick recap, MetLife received the highest score by our ITN scoring committee to remain our insurance carrier for the group legal plan benefit when their current contract expires on March 31st of 2024. Again, this is a voluntary benefit made available to employees at no cost to the district. The agreed upon premiums for the new contract are less than the current premiums, and once again, they do include some enhanced benefits for the employees who purchased them. And I will go ahead and pause again for any questions or comments from the superintendent and the board.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Board members, I don't have any statements to make regarding this particular issue. I'll turn it over to you and for your discussion and questions of staff.
Okay. Board members? Ms. Morgan, do you have any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
Then I get to ask one. Is this automatically, are all employees enrolled in this automatically or assumed to be enrolled in it?
It's an annual election that an employee must make if they want to enroll in it, sir.
Thank you. That was my only question. All right, thank you for your presentation there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Next on our agenda is the mid-year interim evaluation process.
Session following me.
Dr. Bernier?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so you know, this is a specific item related to the board's mid-year evaluation process related to their school board attorney. Dr. Ken Savage, our Chief Strategy Officer, is here to help lead the discussion.
Good afternoon, Chairman, esteemed board members, Dr. Bernier, and Attorney Dupuy Bruno. Today's presentation is the overview of the evaluation process for our board attorney and specifically commencing the mid-year interim evaluation. First, I just want to step back and review the entire annual evaluation cycle so that we understand where we are at in this process, but also to see the process in its totality as well. We are at the September-October timeframe, that second bullet. So the two major activities that occur during this phase are the legal department providing their annual update, as well as outcomes, and the board members having a chance to provide mid-year feedback to the board attorney on what is working well and what needs to improve. Looking ahead, in March, that is when you will conduct your annual final evaluation of the board attorney, and this culminates in April as a board action item. One thing that I didn't put in here is the 360 assessment. While the 360 assessment is not intended to be an evaluation, the insights gained from the 360 can be particularly helpful for the subject employee. They get a balanced perspective from a variety of the different stakeholder groups, and for the board attorney, that actually occurs in February. So that's the gap that you see between October and March. That occurs in February. Now, since that is intended to be professional development, it's a professional development activity, it is not a formal part of the evaluation per se, but that is planned and budgeted for this year to take place. And I know not only is Attorney Dupuy Bruno looking forward to it, but she is also evaluating whether to use that instrument with all of her attorneys because the particular model they have is very light in cost. So they too could have more input from the various stakeholders that they interact with. So it's not just then the board attorney, but really the entire legal services department getting that value for development, to charge their development moving forward. So that's the idea, to stimulate targeted professional development and as well as improvement of overall legal services as a system within the district. Again, those aren't formalized elements of this evaluation, but they will play a valuable role in additional feedback, and I wanted to be sure and mention that now, today. Again, that happens in February, so as board members in January, you would receive that initial communication. So as you recall, there's a email you get, and I want to make sure we go over all these things because it can be confusing when you have mid-year evaluations, you have 360 assessments, and you have final evaluations. Very easy to get all of them kind of jumbled together. So moving forward, let's look at the specifics for this segment of the mid-year interim evaluation. So you can see that if there are no changes to the evaluation that we want to use, then we could begin this process as early as today. That would give you a full month, essentially, to complete this. If there are any revisions to timeline or to the instrument itself, then that would push us back or condense that time period. Looking in October, a couple of the pieces that occur is the board attorney furnishes any pertinent information she would like for the board to consider as you complete that, but also that there is an annual report during October by the Legal Services Department, which talks about specific performance outcomes for the completed fiscal year, and that is issued to the board during this time frame. By October 11th, that is our deadline here for individual board members to have completed their feedback, and then by the 13th, it's compiled and sent to the board attorney. One thing that's worth mentioning, unlike the final evaluation, which has a quantitative aspect that I have to compile, I usually need more time to compile those numbers together. This does not have that. It's all qualitative. It's all just feedback, written feedback. The same as the superintendent when they have that piece that you did over the summer. It's just feedback for them to have. So there's no rating, so the compilation is minimal. It's really just monitoring to see that it was done, following up, making sure it wasn't lost in like a junk mail filter or something like that. Just to give you a glimpse of the final evaluation timeline that occurs in March, these are those future milestones, and again, that, as I mentioned earlier, it culminates in April with the actual board item that takes that rating and pulls it all together. So let's take a look at the actual instrument for a moment. So just to kind of brief the headings that are here before I switch over on the screen to the actual document. The most important reminder is that even though it's an evaluation, it's a mid-year, it's really non-evaluative in the sense that it doesn't produce a rating. It does allow for the open-ended qualitative feedback. So really, as a board member, this gives you the opportunity to really speak more generically in terms of something you want to say. You're not bound into that individual box, as well as the instruments are consistent between the board employees. This is actually the format that the board auditor also uses when you were assessing RSM, and also the superintendent's mid-year interim evaluation as well. So let me switch gears for a second and pull up the document. Okay, so here is the form, and this is again attached to it so you can see. It starts with the cover page, and then it goes into these specific positives and suggestions for growth. So you probably are familiar with that type of method. It's just positives and opportunities essentially based on those areas. So there's nothing changed in the instrument from last year. This is the exact same instrument, with the one exception being that the new board member names were added to the drop down. That is one adjustment that is made because it's not substantive other than just making sure the correct board member names are there. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. That, of course, has its strengths and weaknesses. A strength of this, of making no changes, is that the board attorney can use it year over year to see how those comments have changed. And so any intentionality that she had in trying to react to this type of feedback, she can compare the prior year to this year and really see did the efforts of improvement help in managing that piece. The only weakness of this, of not changing it, from my perspective, is just that the differences between the final evaluation standards and the mid-year evaluation standards, the final evaluation goes into quite a bit more detail, a lot more specific, and it has 5 standards that we landed on, whereas at more indicators, this one is not. And so there isn't that perfect alignment, but again, the intention of this is very different. That's as a result. It's not a major issue because the intention of this instrument is so qualitative in nature. For example, this is a really important piece to take away from this. As you see up on the screen, there's individual indicators. Board members are not expected to write about individual indicators within the standard. They do that at the final evaluation where they really have the opportunity to rate accordingly. But for this, it's more designed to get the spirit of what is that overall standard, and then it kind of gives you, and so if there are any elements you'd want to talk about, you could, but you certainly have no obligation to write about each one of them. That is not the intention of this type of instrument. And lastly, since there is no numeric rating you are able to provide to the board attorney directly, you can either hand your completed copy to the board attorney, or you can submit it electronically to her, or you can send it to me and I will make sure that she gets a copy of that because there is no compilation, as I mentioned earlier. Though we have occasionally had issues where, as people try to submit it via email, that it gets filtered into our junk filter. That's unfortunate, but it does happen sometimes, and so it is really good when you send it to try to request some type of confirmation based on whoever you send it to, just to make sure that they in fact have received it, because we've had quite a bit of occurrences where it gets kind of hidden for a little while, but on most cases we're able to recover them. Okay, all right. So that's in the gist at that particular piece. I do want to make sure we have an opportunity to have some board discussion on this, though it is fairly straightforward. So at this time, before we turn things over to the the board, I would defer to the superintendent or the board attorney, actually, since this is her mid-year evaluation as well. If there's any comments from either of you before we open up for the board discussion.
I don't have any comments.
I don't have any comments. Thank you, Dr. Savage.
All right, well, then I stand ready to turn it back to you, Chairman, and just any conversation, I'll be taking notes and direction from the board.
All right, board members, do you have any comments here? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you, Dr. Savage. My question is, and you had made mention that the 360 assessment was planned and budgeted. I guess the cost on that, and we don't, of course, you don't have that off the top of your head, as well as maybe including the other attorneys, so that's going to be additional cost as well. And how was that budgeted? Because we just did the budget.
Yes, so just as a matter of normal departmental budgeting practices, this was a cost that they actually budgeted last year, not knowing 100% what it would cost. And when we actually were able to get the services for this particular provider, it was actually much more affordable than what we had expected based on prior estimates that had been done. And so when we added it, the additional cost is actually very, very minimal, substantially less than what it was. I actually do have a record of that in my email. While if you would like, I can pull that up while we're still here so you can have that understanding. But it was part of the board attorney's budget for professional development for this planned budget year. So it was just one of those costs. Very, very light in terms of costs, though, I would characterize.
Okay, just want, light to one, maybe heavy for others.
Understood.
So I just want to make sure that, and then also, so in the 360, I'm not sure if this is to you or to Mr. Pri-Bruno, the other attorney's 360 assessment, it's for the benefit of how you deem yourself doing when you have their assessments?
So it's the same thing, it's the same concept. The 360 allows us to ascertain how our clients are viewing our work, to give us feedback in terms of what are blind spots, what are things that we're doing well. So it's exactly the same thing that we did last year. And the one that we did last year was very, very beneficial. And as Dr. Savage, the cost was not a lot. And to add the additional attorneys, it's not really that much more to add them. So it would be beneficial for them as well to be able to understand what their clients are viewing and what their clients are saying are a blind spot, what their clients are saying that they're doing well. So it's a very valuable tool.
Thank you.
Any other questions of anyone present here? Ms. Morgan, do you have any questions?
I have none. Thank you very much.
All right. I want to thank you for clarifying on the evaluation that we did not have to answer every single one there. Because I was going to try to do that. So, but as a general, and that does make a lot more sense. So thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for preparing that.
Show up. Show up.
I think he said it for me because I thought he did every one of those.
Yeah, I would say a lot of you are overachievers. So I just, it's been very impressive to see the level of feedback that's been given, but just I wanted to clarify that because on the final, you do have an obligation to provide a rating for every area. Unless you don't have any information, then it has a different scoring area. This one, I did mention it for that exact reason, because we've had folks attach notes, and really you do a great job providing feedback as an overall board. This, you can even print it and handwrite them. You can attach your own paper to it. It's very informal in that way. It's really designed at the mid-year to give specific guidance to your employee of this is what you're doing well, this is what you need to improve upon. So that's the whole intention.
All right. Thank you.
And I will get the numbers to the board. I have them. I just couldn't find them quickly enough, but we will get that cost of what the 360 assessment was for both the board and for the all the attorneys.
Okay. Mr. Fisher.
Quick question, I don't want to blow this up either. Just coming off the evaluation, it brought up something else that I know has come up. How and what point do we deal with our attorneys' salaries as a board? I know it's come up for, I thought in one of our one-on-ones in regards to the, our assistant attorneys, and how is that dealt with, and when do we deal with that?
Good question. I know we're doing a survey of salaries for the whole district.
Okay.
I personally would like to have that information first before, looking at salaries like that. But I'm not being new. I'm not sure exactly where we go to that. Dr. Bernier, do you have any for salaries or?
Well, I think clarifying for the community and people listening as well as members in attendance, I think what the chairman is referring to is an ITN process that is underway for a specific job study for the entire school district, meaning looking at all positions, whether they be paraprofessional, lawyers, executive cabinet members, directors, coordinators. The goal is to get a very clear picture of what our jobs and our jobs responsibilities are, and then looking at what we are paying and what compensation should be. Those ITNs are currently under review. I believe they have also scheduled interviews, if those were conducted today, are being conducted now. So they're in the process of selecting the company. That will be 4 to 6 months out. But I also share with you that it has been a past practice regarding salaries that once we are done negotiating with our unions, of which we have an executive session today to discuss additional bargaining authority, then it is not unusual for those salaries to also be augmented based upon whatever percentage the other employees have been given. In terms of a deeper discussion regarding lawyerly compensation or our attorney's compensation, we would take, Mr. Savage and I would take direction, then we could work with our human resource team or others depending on what the board's desire is for additional information.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I thought that our attorneys are on annual contracts and they're different. They're all different scheduled. They're not on the same schedule. Am I correct?
So yes, so the attorney's contracts are based on their date of hire and they rotate in that schedule, yes. So you had one that was rotating in August that sent an email requesting an augmentation, and you have another that's rotating in December that's requested an augmentation.
Yeah, so I think that leads me to your question, Mr. Fisher, because I think we have to address the salary sooner than later. I would love to have waited for the job study information, but Dr. Bernier just said that's like 6 months out. So, I mean, we have employees that are making requests, and we don't want that to go, to fall on deaf ears. We want to make sure that we're addressing these issues as they arise. So I don't know how we want to have that conversation. And if we, I mean, obviously, we're having contracts that are coming up. We got August and then December, and we have more than 2 attorneys. So I'm just wanting the board to have a little deeper discussion, I think. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Ms. Juvenile, that's kind of, again, some of us are still newer to this, and this is the only opportunity we have to discuss this kind of stuff. So I just was curious on that, and I appreciate you bringing that up as well about the study, Mr. Person. So as I said,
Being this would be a contract, they're hired by contract, would this be a shade discussion? Or not necessarily, or?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. All right. Ms. Jordan?
And do we feel that it's proper for employees to be asking the board for raises? Because what if that opens us up for everybody sending us an email requesting us to pay them more money? Just to go ahead and put that out there.
Patrica?
I don't think that emails were sent to us. I think they were forwarded to us. I had not even considered that job study, and I love the idea of waiting until that comes out. I understand Ms. Giovanelli's concerns, but, the employees know based on this conversation that that's what we're waiting for, and if we need to true up those salaries in 6 months, then we do that, and if we don't need to true up in 6 months, then we are where we are. So I'm very grateful that you brought that up, because I think that that's really a perfect way to address this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think the attorneys would be okay with moving forward with the job study and waiting. However, I think they would also ask, because they are you only have 5 employees that are actually on contract. That will be your attorneys as well as the superintendent, because they have made a request prior to their contracts being renewed, that their salary be reviewed, that whatever happens from that job study, that it goes back to the date that they made their official request.
I would be in consensus for something along those lines. How did the rest of the board feel about that situation?
That was what I meant when I said true up. Yeah.
Everybody? Okay. All right. Okay, Ms. Morgan, I can't see your hand.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll go to the, well, any other questions, Dr. Savage?
I did get the answer to the question. It's just over $600 US for all 3 board attorneys and the board attorney as well as the 3 additional assistant school board attorneys, 600 in totality, $600 US. It's a UK-based firm, so they do it in pounds, but the equivalence is just over $600.
Thank you. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Seems very reasonable. All right. Thanks again.
Pleasure.
We always appreciate it as usual. Okay, we will move on to the good of the order. Mr. Fisher, do you have anything for now?
Thank you for letting me bring that up and indulge me in that. I didn't know when else to bring it up, and when the evaluation stuff was going through, it reminded me of that one-on-one. So besides that, I have no other comments. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Giovanelli?
I actually think it was perfect timing, so thank you for bringing that up. I don't have anything other than I am going to go to South Fort Myers High School's homecoming is Friday night, so I'm going to attend that. So I had to think about it for a second. Like, what am I doing? So anyways, I just thought I'd bring that up if anybody else is attending. It's a good game. All right, thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
I thought you meant the dance.
No, I meant for bugging.
Like, you couldn't pay me enough to go to homecoming dance. So I did want to bring up invocation at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know if the board needs to have a discussion about it, but, and this is a little bit sarcastic, so please don't take it the wrong way, but we've had 2 warnings from our attorney, and I think that 3 strikes and we're out. So I don't know if we should have a discussion now or a discussion later. That's my number 1 good cause. My number 2 good cause is we are 48 minutes into a 3-hour meeting and we're done. So I think that reinforces the discussion we had at our last short meeting that we need to stop having these meetings. Those are my comments.
Okay. Ms. Jordan?
I would like to have the conversation on the invocation.
Yeah.
So that way, we have the time
now.
to do that.
For the public, our last meeting, we had talked about having either fewer workshops or combining workshops.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's a good idea. You know, some workshops obviously are long. There's no doubt about it. And some others, because certain things are dropped at the last few minutes, they're a little bit shorter, like today. And that's good. So on the invocation, Attorney Bruno, would you like to make a recommendation for us to start, or just what we should be doing? We've all had a one-on-one with the attorney, I think.
Yeah, so there are concerns with regard to the invocation. I want to make sure that the board is legally compliant with what is required for an invocation for a legislative body. There are some steps that we are going to take from an administrative standpoint. From now on, the individuals who are coming to do the invocation will only, in terms of the introduction, will only have their name stated and the church that they belong to. There is a formula, or at least a graph, that provides the board with the data that's reflective of our demographics for I would say believers, non-believers, all of the denominations. I would ask the board follow that particular graph to ensure that we're reflective of our community. In addition, We will also, when we're talking to these individuals who are coming in, we're going to give them a little bit more direction in terms of what is an invocation, what can be done, what cannot be done, and we will provide them some samples of invocations from the United States House of Representatives so that they have a better understanding. I'm hoping that with these tweaks, this will suffice for us to move forward. If not, then I think the board's going to have a discussion as to whether or not we want to continue with invocations, if we want to just do moments of silence. Those are some serious discussions because I want to make sure that the board is legally compliant. And at this time, I have there's things I want to fix.
Thank you. All right, discussion. Ms. Patrica.
So I think keeping a time for invocation at the beginning of the meeting is really important, and this was illustrated for me last night watching the ALVA meeting. It lends a level of formality to our action meetings that I think is essential to set the tone in the room, not to mention my own personal views about the opportunity to pray before a meeting. Personally, I think that's really important, but more generally speaking, it lends itself well to just it being a formal meeting where we're taking actual action and spending millions and millions of dollars every time we do it. So I'd like to find a way to keep it. If we have to default to a moment of silence, I'm fine with that. And I think part of the issue, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, please don't take this as an insult, when you're a new board member, so many things get thrown at you, and perhaps the details of this specific process were not completely understood or committed to exact memory to the letter. So I think, based on the attorney's recommendation, we can continue going where we're going, continue to look at the data, and if we have more problems, then she's going to come back and tell us. Is that good? Are we good with that?
Ma'am, any other, Mr. Jada Fleming?
When we were having our one-on-one discussion about this, I did ask, where did the data come from and how old is the data? And I would just like, can you follow up with that?
For the public, when we talk about data, what we're talking about is having the invocation by all the different faiths being represented throughout the year. Whether it be the Jewish community, the Catholic community, the Methodist community, the Baptist, I'm not going to name them all, Muslim. So we would like to, and by law, yes.
And Mr. Chairman, non-faith believers as well, right?
Right.
So, yes.
So that's where we're going to try. We have a list of churches that we can call and ask them to do it, and we're just going to try to monitor it so we move it around, is my understanding, and I'm fine with that. So I would not like to go to just only a moment of silence, if we can help it. Ms. Jordan.
We've had that conversation in the past regarding the moment of silence, and we did do that. We took away prayer for a minute, and the public did not like that. Because and so that's why we gave the option of whatever board member felt comfortable in going out and getting someone, like for instance myself, I personally go to my district, a representative of the district, knowing that there are many different types of churches within the district, to try to bring the community in and having a conversation. Or if we cannot find one, then we are assisted to find those churches. But then again, there are those who rather do a moment of silence, and that's okay.
Right.
So I think it's optional, or if we don't have somebody, then you have the right to say your own, which we have done that as well up here. So I think that it's all depends on the board member and how they want to do that part, as long as we're adhering to what we need to be as far as the state is concerned.
All right.
Ms. Giovanelli.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I support the invocation and not go into a moment of silence. I think that's an option that some board members have taken, and I respect that. But for me, I actually agree with Ms. Patrica. I think it sets the tone for the evening, and I think it's vital to do that. I make a point to make my selections very diverse. I don't even stay within my district. So I just make sure that I, ask many different churches and communities to, so I think we just need to make that effort, and I believe in keeping the prayer back in, keeping it in our meetings. Thank you.
We do have a very diverse community and student body, so I think we need to keep that in mind. Ms. Morgan, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm absolutely in agreement. I think that limiting the introductions to the name and affiliation, providing the guidance with respect to what's permitted, I think I would like to go ahead with the invocation, but I am very concerned with where we have been with it. And so I think we need to make very clear to people that there are limitations on what is allowed. And I think providing examples is perfect. So I'm all in. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Okay.
Kathy?
Okay, yes.
I just wanted to add to the conversation, Mr. Chairman, that to Ms. Patrica's point and Ms. Giovanelli's point, that is exactly what the invocation is for. It is not part of our agenda. It's prior to any business being conducted to set the tone for the meeting. And one thing that I'll just put it out there to the public so they understand, one thing that we cannot do is proselytize or disparage. This has to be as inclusive and respectful of all of the diverse beliefs that we have. And those are the things that we will work with those coming to do the invocation, so we have no issues in the future.
Thank you. All right, I believe, were we at Ms. Patrica for good of the order? No other?
That was me.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was it. I just wanted to have
That's
that
fine.
conversation.
I got to remember where we stopped when we went
okay.
back.
May I?
Yes.
So.
Oh, you missed your turn.
Can
Go
we direct the superintendent to figure out how to decrease meetings like this?
Yeah.
Like, can we
Yes.
like take some kind of action to do that? I know that Ms. Morgan in the past has suggested that we have a schedule or a calendar of when during the year we will be discussing certain things like budget or fast test results or school grades, or so maybe as part of that schedule being presented to us, and maybe November's the time to do it, I don't know.
At the reorg, yes.
But talking about it during a workshop at the end of a workshop, I mean, if this is all we're talking about,
Right.
like, we shouldn't be meeting, so.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Superintendent, when we were at our conference, some of the other board members said that some never had workshops, number one, except for budget. But the ones who did said one of them said they were presented with a schedule that at this Wednesday or whatever, this workshop every year is the budget. That This workshop is always going over the scores, for instance, the different, and they had like a little schedule, and they were able to do that. So they at least had some idea. But we have stuff popping up all the time too that we have to work in there, whether it be a school or anything else. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I think that we do have one of those. We do have a calendar that tells us there are certain times of the year that we must speak about certain items.
Right.
And we all have access to that. Also, when we're doing the meetings, and I had the opportunity to do this for a couple of years, it's just that I know that in the past we've had a lot of discussion on the dais. It may not have been for any certain topic, but there was extra conversation perhaps, where we do not have that now because everybody's, when they're coming in here, those questions are not being asked. So the time allotment for, say, the 30 minutes per whatever the topic is, perhaps that just needs to be reevaluated, and just the meetings shortened versus versus having 30, 60 minutes per item, assuming that we're going to have 30 minutes worth of conversation. And I think that was something that we really looked at before in the past of what do we think the conversation is going to be on these topics? How much conversation will we have? If that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's tough. You don't want to schedule too little, obviously, too. I really still credit the one-on-ones with both the attorney and the superintendent for keeping the amount of questions down, plus the review the board does. So that helps. If you review it and then ask the questions, then it's sort of answered. And I know sometimes we ask questions just so the public knows what's going on. Ms. Giovanelli?
But also in the past, the PowerPoints, presentations were longer than what was allotted. And for some reason, that's not happening. They're staying on time. And it was usually, because I would look at something and I'm like, well, that conversation is going to be more than 15 minutes or 30 or whatever it was. But that seems to be working out real well now. I don't know that we need the 6 meetings a month. We went to that FSBA thing recently, and nobody does 6 meetings a month. No one in that entire group of school districts did, and we know that we received the information. So I do think we need to look at that. Do we need 6 meetings? I like it being, we know every Wednesday or every other Wednesday we're doing that, we have an agenda review. I think knowing those dates, we have it planned. I just like having a planned schedule. And sometimes in the past, we didn't have that. Yes, it was planned, but not, I don't know, it just seemed to go awry. And when they were long meetings that I was worn out when I left here, like completely. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Jada, wait, that was me. So anybody else have any go to the order? Superintendent?
I just wanted, before we leave this item of discussion, I think it's important to know how sometimes things get scheduled. Again, we did have some items pulled this time around. And I always think better to give people more time in their day than to take it away from them. I think workshops in particular provide an opportunity then for this would, short of the executive session we have planned this afternoon, this would have given us, it's different than the briefings that occur. So there's a couple of things we need to consider. 30 minutes is a minimum amount of time frame when you plan a workshop or a work session for each topic, because if the board members are going to get 5 minutes as you normally give each other, that's 35 minutes of potential discussion with each board member. So that's where the 30-minute time frame comes in. I appreciate the compliment, and I will share it with the team that's present and the team that's probably listening or will be in cabinet on Monday. The PowerPoints and presentations go through a much more rigorous vetting process before they come to all of you. These particular ITN presentations were brought to cabinet at least twice. Cabinet does not always feel like a place where you're loved, but we give lots of love when people are finished, because we try to anticipate not just your questions, but other questions that might arise, and therefore the presentations adapt and they lead to giving you the answers, I hope, that you would want in a presentation, so that while there are questions that still remain, we've tried to anticipate what some of the questions you were and make sure that they're addressed to the process. I will say that I have at our next face-to-face direct report, and I apologize for yesterday having to conduct them by phone, but I have probably a list that you've seen as well of what the other large districts do, how often they meet. But there are some considerations that we need to talk about, probably in a workshop, to discuss this openly with the public, because if you were to go to 2 business meetings a month and potentially schedule 2 workshops a month, with one of them being on the calendar as a reserve that we need, but not necessarily always utilized, you must also go back and revisit some policies regarding public comment. Because at your workshops, as they're currently scheduled and structured, public comment is not allowed And I think if you had any type of movement where we reduce the amount of opportunity for our public to talk to us, and again, that would be the will of the board, I think we need to be cognizant of our public thinking that we're trying to prevent them from coming and speaking on behalf of issues and other things. So if we might have to add, if we were to remove briefings, we would have to then potentially add public comment to your workshop agendas. It's more than just saying, hey, let's cut back to a number of meetings, and I need to have individual conversations with each of you. And then we also have to finish the revision of the strategic plans specific outputs. Like, I will tell you that our most robust conversations seem to occur when that area that we present from is filled with executive directors, people talking about what we're doing in schools, what we're doing in terms of trying to promote reading achievement, ELL achievement, those types of things. That's where we get into more robust discussions, and we can probably count on that taking at least 45 minutes to an hour. So I am wide open, and I know the staff is as well, to looking at 2 business meetings, making some decisions about briefings and workshops, but also having that conversation and being prepared for our next direct report. So my next direct report with all of you to have that discussion about what you would like to do with public comment, because I think the public watching right now would want to know that they still have the opportunity to come forward and speak on the issues that we'd be discussing. So those are just my comments, and I will continue to work to get you to a place that in November the new board and how it seats would, how this board reorganizes and reseats itself. At that point, you could adopt a new meeting schedule, and the superintendent will push as hard as he can, but be very respectful of the authority, for 2 board meetings in July, only because of what impacts our assistant principals and their appointments getting to their schools, so that they can use the month of July to be supportive, not only of their principal, but to their school community scheduling and their teachers. So I know that would be a different shift, but waiting a whole month to July 30th this year put us behind in terms of getting our assistant principal appointments out to the schools, and then many of those assistant principals were promoted and left a teacher vacancy in the wake that couldn't be filled until they were promoted. So just wanted to let you know, and we'll continue to work with you to try to find a solution to the amount of time and ensuring that these are fuller, more robust sessions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, you had something further?
Well, yeah, so to add to what Dr. Bernier just mentioned, some of the workshops from the FSBA, some of the workshops, they do allow public comment, but why wouldn't we just have a workshop scheduled and then a briefing to still have both options? Because obviously briefings, when public does speak, that could be a longer meeting than a workshop. So I don't know that I want to change our processes, our policies based on that, other than just having a standing briefing and a standing workshop, and then our 2 business meetings. That was my 2 cents again.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we just make these recommendations on our one-on-one, those thoughts like that. I have some also. Okay, Ms. Morgan, do you have anything? Are you still there? I'll go Jada last.
I'm still here. I'm still sorry. Still here, and I have nothing to add. Thank you. Those were the 2 things that I was concerned about getting done in today's workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jada Fleming.
Thank you. Yeah, just for the record, I think it's really incredibly important that we do keep the invocation and allow the freedom of board members to choose whether or not to do a moment of silence, ask guests to come and give the invocation, or give the invocation themselves, as long as we're following procedure and policy set in place with that. Secondly, I think that I keep hearing about the amount of meetings. I think it's more about frequency than it is taking what could be done in 2 hours and try to just fill a meeting to say that we met for 4. So I don't think that would be a good use of our time, and most importantly, I don't think it's a good use of staff time, because when we're in these meetings, we're requiring staff to be here staff is required to be here when they could be at schools or doing other things that they should be doing. So I think that's something we need to consider when we're having those discussions. Also, I was able to give a presentation at Paul Lawrence Dunbar Middle. So great to be in the classroom with students, and just a lot of patriotism surrounded those hallways that morning. So that was great to see with the students. And I guess I'll bring this up. I know that the superintendent and I have spoken about this before, but a couple weeks ago I was able to attend kind of a demonstration, and then I asked if I could go watch a lesson also at the Lee County Mosquito Control District. I don't know if the public knows, or if maybe some of you all don't even know about the partnership that we have with mosquito control. So they do a lesson in kindergarten, 5th, 7th, and then high school biology / chemistry classes. It's just such a wonderful program. I hope that we can continue to keep that in our classrooms. I know that for some teachers, it's also an opportunity for students that may not get to otherwise have a true science lab in that day. Students are really engaged. I was able to actually go watch a high school lesson. I had only ever done elementary, so there's a lot more to learn about mosquitoes after the 5th grade lesson. But I just wanted to maybe recommend that if we did have a workshop, we're talking about doing workshops within a workshop and trying not to do too many workshops. So I think it would be great to have one of them come and just do a small brief presentation about what they do with our district and how they partner with our classrooms. So, but that is all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any comments at this time. I'm sorry, Mr. Pay Bruno, do you have any?
I do not, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing is, I would appreciate as much feedback as possible on the interim evaluation. So, thank you.
Oh, so you want us to fill out something for every one of those little notes?
If you can, but if you can't, I understand if it's a broad, general.
I understand. Dr. Benier.
Just a couple of things that came up relatively recently. Reminder to all that we should be able to move the executive session up since you're all here. And our staff, I just want to make sure staff's prepared that they could move it up as well. The other piece is I received some literature that all of you received. Somebody forwarded that to me just prior to coming onto the board dais. I had a conversation with our local sheriff. The sheriff is putting that into his social media task force team as a sort of a ticket item for them to investigate. I don't want to go any further because it really revolves around school safety. I will tell you that there's no threat to our children. I think that's the important thing for the community to know. But we want to get more understanding of why board members receive that communication. And then the other piece would be just a reminder that tomorrow, if you are planning to attend the Collaboratory Future Makers Breakfast is tomorrow morning, and parking is always at a premium there. They will this year be offering a free complimentary valet service. So if that's been holding you back from going to the meeting, please feel free to attend. Other than that, I just think it's important to say two things at every one of our meetings. We continue to work on our transportation system. We are working on rerouting buses. We're looking at buses that are underpopulated and overpopulated and trying to strike the balance that if we have an underpopulated route, how we could use another bus to take care of that route, freeing up a bus to do some of the other uncovered routes. We have consistent meetings with transportation once a week to review that process. And as soon as I pull the most recent transportation data out of my email, I will make sure I forward that to you. The other one is to continue to tell our community of learners, educators, and employees that this board is committed to them and to finding a pathway forward within a balanced budget to try to give them the compensation that they believe they deserve and we feel that they have earned. So I just want to continue to put that message out consistently from us as a board and as the superintendent to say that we care very much about our employees and we will continue to do the work through our bargaining units, and thank you to the board members who've been asked specific questions by media and other places for your comments to say we are in the midst of bargaining. It would be really inappropriate. I was just asked about doing an interview with Wink potentially as early as tomorrow, and I just don't believe it's the best thing for us to do right now because we could be seen as interfering in the bargaining process. So look forward to the executive session today where we can talk more and potentially get some resolution to the matters that are impacting all of us. I know after speaking with all of you since Tuesday night, we've all heard them very clearly in their presentations and want to provide some additional strategies that we might be able to bring to the table as early as next week.
Thank you. At this point, having no other business come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 1:16 p.m.